All right, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the stream. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. Tonight, we are going to pick up where we left off last time, and we're going to add context sensitivity and maybe start thinking about how we want to set up the actual player and how that's going to be represented in the game. So, we're going to take a look at those things tonight and see where we wind up. But before we do that, I do just want to take a quick second just to thank the supporters of the channel, beginning with our elite partner, Javier Lazaron. That is the highest tier of subscription over on YouTube memberships and Patreon. Followed by the partners, Gerbolis Inc. and Matt Oscard. That is the next tier of subscription over there on YouTube memberships and Patreon. And finally, last but not least, all of the fine folks listed here under the supporters section. That is a combination of the other tiers of support over on YouTube memberships, Patreon, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated and is going to help me offset the cost of not only running this channel, but also developing this game. So thank you very much for that. And, of course, I appreciate all of you viewers, whether you're joining me here live on stream, either on the YouTube side or the Twitch side. We do simulcast to both. Or if you're just catching the VOD after the fact, obviously, without you guys, the viewers, this project would not exist, and thus this channel would not exist. So thank you guys for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. All right, let's catch up on chat here. Singy, how's it going? Good to see you. Dr. Elliot is Fagerst. As you typed. It's very funny. Congrats on that. Tammin, good to see you as well. Welcome. Avatsal, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. I am doing well, Tammin. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, doing pretty well tonight. Can't complain. All right. So let's take a look at what we're going to look at tonight. So I guess let's start off with where we are currently. So we'll go ahead and run this application real quick. And so if we go ahead and load up, we start off, just moving in our very, very basic scene, right? And the thing that we had set up last time was the ability to trigger something, right? We set up volumes and hit spheres, and whenever we go into this hit sphere, which is represented by this circle here, and our player is right now represented as this box. So whenever those two collide, we will then be considered in the volume or in the trigger volume, and that actually kicks off a series of things. So if you watch the console down here, when we go into that, we can see teleport enabled. At this point, if I were to hit F on my keyboard, I would teleport to a different zone, right? Or if I back out of this, it says teleport disabled, right? And so the way that these are hooked up allows us to very easily configure in our actual scene files, triggers and what kind of things that they can actually execute. So we have that, but we don't have really a way on the screen to say, hey, we can press F to teleport, right? And so obviously we can see that if we have the console here, but obviously that's not an end game thing, right? We're not going to release it that way, right? Obviously, because what's eventually going to happen is you're not going to see this marker here, right? It'll be represented by something else, either a pathway that shrinks or something like that, right? There'll be visual cues, and then when you actually come in here and move over this, something should pop up on the screen that says, hey, you can press F to teleport, right? And so obviously if I do go ahead and press F, we will be loaded into another zone here, right? And this zone doesn't actually have any sort of teleport volume set up, so there's not actually anything we can do at this point, but that's fine. So what we want to do is we want to set up what we call context sensitivity. And context sensitivity is essentially going to do several different things for us. So in this case that we're just talking about, it's going to be allowing us to say, okay, well, if we hit F, the context is there that we want to go ahead and teleport to whatever zone that is talking about teleporting to. But we may also have other things where if we come into a certain radius of an NPC or something like that, maybe pressing F in that case would trigger some dialogue, or maybe it would open up a vendor menu, or maybe both, right? And so we need some sort of system in place to say, we have these different context-sensitive modes, because there will be a finite number of them, right? But we'll have these certain number of modes that are sort of use key. Will be able to sort of toggle between, right? And so one of those would be like a teleport mode. Another one would be like a dialogue mode, or maybe an event mode, something like that. And so all of those things would essentially trigger different things to happen in terms of the UI and whatnot. And so that's what we're going to kind of take a look at tonight. We're going to put something in place for context sensitivity. And then the other thing that I was thinking about as well is also, if we look at zone, one of the zones for our scene, right? There is, I should have split this actually. Let me pull this up here. So one thing that we have in our zones or our scenes for right now, right, is we're kind of constructing this player here, and this is okay for what we're doing right now, you know, while we're just kind of standing things up. But we want to look into doing this programmatically, so that we don't have to include this in each and every individual scene that we're working with in a zone, right? Essentially what we want to happen is we want to pick one of these spawn points and create this at that spawn point. And essentially right now what we're doing is we're essentially just selecting this, and from there going ahead and setting the position and rotation to that particular spawn point. So we're going to take a look at that as well, and start setting things up to actually represent the player in the game, which is going to represent a lot of things. It's going to represent, you know, inventory, equipment, stats, all those good things in time. But the very first sort of thing that's going to be represented there is just going to be the player in the world, right? And we'll just sort of build on top of that. Let's see. Just curious, is the project organized where the game engine produces a lib that games can use, or is what we're seeing just baked into the game engine for testing purposes for now? So the project structure has changed somewhat from the rest of the series, and this is very recent, right? Because I had to start thinking about how we're going to consume this and work with multiple projects, right? So the best way to look at this is actually sort of in a tree view, right? And so we have the project called Illumina, right? And this is the actual game project. And so this has got the K-app and the K-lib, right? So the K-app is basically just the executable. It's very light, but that's also where the assets all are, right? So all of our game assets will be here. Our application configuration, our asset manifest, those kind of things will be here. Eventually our packages will be here. But all of our game code and all the logic is going to be in the K-lib. And the reason for that is because this way, eventually, and we've got this mostly set up. I haven't tested it yet, to be completely honest, but the idea here is that we want to be able to hot reload this game lib while we're actually running the application. And we have everything in place. It's just I put that in place a long time ago and I haven't used it in a while. So I don't know if it's broken or not. If it is, we'll fix it at some point, but that's the idea behind the separation. So the game is sort of at the top level, right? And so there's a game project, and then there are submodules here, which are Git submodules, right? And the only important one that we need to pay attention to at the moment is just the Kohi submodule. So this is where the engine actually exists. And under this is where all of our engine libraries exist, right? So our core, our plugins, our runtime, things like that, right? We still have some old game setup stuff here that has to be split out, but you can ignore those for now. And so that's more or less the essential structure behind the whole project, right? And the reason we've done it this way is because each game can target a different version, even at a specific commit of the engine, and consume it in different ways. And so, we could have one game that is forever stuck on version 0.9 or something like that. And then maybe the next game winds up releasing on version 2.1 or something like that. And so it easily allows us to go back and forth between those game projects if we have to patch something or something down the road. We can retrofit those patches to older versions of the engine, or maybe upgrade the game to use a different version of the engine or something like that. And then all of our releases are tagged as well. So we can also associate the submodule to a tag if we wanted to do that. But yeah, essentially what Tammin says there is accurate, right? So the engine is a collection of dynamic libraries. Yep. So I hope that makes sense. Are you on KDE now? Yes, I am on KDE. Yep. I'm using KDE in Wayland. Yeah. Will you have cold reloading? I mean, technically every project has cold reloading, right? I would consider cold reloading to be like shutting the whole thing down and reloading it, like relaunching the project. I know you were kidding there, but technically I would consider that cold reloading. So you're not wrong. All right. Okay, Singy, I will take a look at those afterwards. Thank you for posting those. Ivo, good to see you as well. Finally got a live stream. Nice. Your beard doesn't grow as fast as mine. That's funny. And I've cut this back a couple of times, actually. All right. You were definitely shitposting. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I would say that's what cold reloading is, though, for sure. Sub-zero reloading, you have to restart the PC. Yeah, there you go. That's in Kelvin, right? When you create a release, do you ship the shared objects that others can install through CMake instead of the submodule approach? So that's something that we have to decide at some point. More than likely, the way that this is going to work, because when we actually build, I kind of skipped over this detail. When we actually build, everything winds up in this top level bin folder, right? So all of our shared objects and our libraries and all that stuff winds up here. So this is essentially the way that it's going to ship. And then it'll have packages that sit right next to this, right? So we have all of our asset manifests and stuff like that for our game and some of the other packages. We will actually be baking binary packages when we go to ship. We'll bake those into basically a huge binary blob that we can then index into. And essentially from there, those will sit alongside this in the bin folder, or either in the bin folder or somewhere near it. And so this is essentially what it'll look like when we release it, minus the console.log probably, or maybe not, I don't know. Absolute zero reloading, you have to buy a new PC. I'm not mad at that. Or at least format C, right? If you're on Windows. Or RM, RF, star. All right, let's do some cold coding tonight. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right, so what I'm thinking is we'll tackle the context sensitivity first. And then we'll come back to how we're going to represent the player and start thinking about that. And we'll get that in as well. So context sensitivity is going to be, it's going to be a game-specific system. So it is definitely going to belong in the games library, right? Now I could do, should it be its own system? I don't know that it necessarily needs to be, but that might be a nice way to kind of split it apart from everything else. Limited main is already getting kind of large, right? So maybe let's go ahead and do that. Let's call this. Should we call it the player context system or just context system? I guess context system, right? So we'll have a H file and we'll do a C file. And I think I'm actually going to probably figure most of this out in the C file and then add the header stuff, right? We'll obviously need some stuff like include defines. We may need some other types as well, but I guess one thing we could include here is we could type def in enumeration, and we can call that context modes, right? Or I guess it would be context mode. All right, and so this will be context mode none is going to be the first one. So that means we don't have any sort of context sensitivity stuff whatsoever, right? The next one would probably be context mode event is what I'm thinking. So that would be sort of an open-ended thing where when the context key comes up or when the context sensitive UI comes up, pressing the use key, which in our case is just going to be the F key, pressing that would kick off some sort of event. And that event technically could be like a portal, right? I mean, I guess you could argue that everything's an event. Maybe that's not specific enough, right? Because the other things I was thinking was like context mode dialog, right? Because dialog is actually going to kick us into like a different key mapping and that kind of thing where we can't move the player, we can't do anything except sort of progress through dialogue, some sort of cutscene or something like that. So maybe instead of event, maybe we use something a little less specific like teleport, right? Yeah, I think that works. And we could just keep adding to these, right? I'll just add a couple in here as an example. And then if we go to context system C, we can include context system H. And then what I'm thinking is we probably have a few different things that we would need to know for context sensitivity, right? So we'd probably want to have, I guess we could return, I think return type of void is going to be fine. We could also do, I suppose we could do a Boolean to check some stuff to see if it fails, right? But if it fails, what are we really going to do about it? I suppose we could use assertions instead. We should probably do that a little bit more anyway. So what we'll do is we'll say context system mode set, right? And we'll have context mode, and then we'll have parameters that we can apply with it, right? So essentially we're going to have a string that's going to be executed command, right? And that's basically going to be that console command that we want to execute whenever this kicks off. The other thing that we would want to include is some sort of display text, right? As to, what is the context that we are currently saying? What do we want to actually tell the player, right? And ideally, this would be localized. So we'd probably want to localize this before passing it here. And then, actually, that's probably about it for now, right? So what this would essentially do, and I guess we could do an executed command. We could also have like a callback version of this, where you could execute a specific function. And maybe that would be a little bit more powerful as well, so we don't have to do everything through console commands. So I guess we could say executed console command, right? Or I guess it wouldn't be executed, it'd just be console command. So maybe we have context system mode set callback, right? And maybe the callback is just, going to be, I should probably type def this instead, actually. Let's do pfn context mode set callback, right? And we'll type def this here. Let's put it here. So we'll type def this, and we'll say it'll be return type void, and then we're gonna want that, and then I don't know if we're gonna take any parameters just yet, right? So let's just say void for here for right now. Because we may want to pass some sort of, maybe we could pass the context mode, right? Which means this would need to be down here. Maybe that's what we do. RM, RF / yeah, exactly. Yep. Star I think works too, but I think that's guarded by a lot of terminals these days. I think both are guarded by a lot of terminals. Such P. That's a very funny name. How's it going? Good to see you as well. Fix the KSN file first. Well, this is going to be a little bit more involved, right? Because we have to figure out how to represent the player. We are gonna get to that because this is not going to take very long to set this up. I'm mostly just setting this up to kind of get us some sort of base system that we can get to kind of handle this for us. So we'll have a console command that kicks off whenever the use key is pressed with that particular mode, right? So actually we're gonna need essentially, let me just grab these real quick. Go over here. We're going to need these here anyway. We don't actually have to export that, so that's fine. But what we're going to need is a state, right? So we're going to need all of these things. We need a type def struct context system state. All right, context system state. And that's going to have in it those things, and then also this. Right? Oops. Okay. And then this is going to have to move up here. Okay. So we'll really need to take in context system state there and there. Which means we'll also have to do that here and there. Okay, so anytime we do this, obviously we'll check if state's there. Anytime we do this, we're going to say state mode is equal to mode. State console command is going to actually be, we're going to do string duplicate of that, so we don't have to worry about the life cycle of it, right? Console command. State display text is also going to be string duplicate display text, right? And obviously we probably should do if checks on these, right? Console command, if console command. I don't know why we'd ever call this without having that, but there we are. Okay. And then the last thing we're going to do is, since we called this function, we are going to make sure that state callback is zeroed out, right? And then the other half of this is going to be, instead of the console command, this is going to be callback. And then callback is equal to callback, right? And then here we want to make sure that if state console command string free state console command, we're actually going to have to do that in a few other places too, and then zero it out, right? So we'll do it there. We'll also have if state display text state string free state display text state display text equals 0. Okay, so we'll always make sure that those things are properly unset. We'll need to take this up here and do that here, and then here as well for the console command, right? So we'll clear out the old, set the new, clear out the old, set the new. And then that doesn't get set at all. And then callback just gets set, and then we'll clear out the old, set the new, and make sure that console command, I guess I could do these in the same order, right? I could at least do this, just so they're a little bit more consistent. Okay. Now the other piece to this is we sort of have this state in here now, right? But like, what do we do with it, right? How do we trigger that context sensitivity, right? And also, we should probably have something in there, some way to maybe clear this without having to just say set with all these set to 0, right? Because that seems kind of lame. It can call that internally, but let's see. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that over there on the YouTube side. Null is more explicit in my opinion, even though it is 0. Yeah, I just use 0 everywhere though. It's just habit. Old habits die hard, I guess. Yeah, I just... Also, null isn't... this is a big part of it, right? Because then I have to have string h everywhere, which I don't want. I mean, I could define it in my defines h, right? I just don't. It is more explicit, you're not wrong, but it's literally how I've been writing this thing for the last 4 years. So to go through now and change it, it would just be a pain, and it would be highly inconsistent if I did that. Okay. So, the next thing that we need is we're going to need a void context system. And I guess we could say clear, right? We'll just say clear. Context system state, right? And that's all we're going to provide it, right? And then that literally just calls context. Oops. Context system mode set, right? We're just going to call that with state, and then context mode none, and then we just pass 0 here and 0 here. Oops. Right? So we could do this from code, or we could just call this. It's a little bit easier. And then we need context system execute, right? Context system state. And essentially what this would do is if system, or if state rather, essentially what this would do would be we would check console command and execute it if it exists, or call back and execute that if it exists. And then we would also need to trigger the display text, right? So this is actually going to have to fire off something to actually display something in our UI. And so I'm thinking the way that that's probably going to work is either another console command, or we could use an event code for that. I guess probably if we use a console command for it, we can actually pass a string, I think. I don't remember if we actually had added that. Let's come back to that, because we are going to have to solve that. So the first thing is if state callback, we'll check the callback first. If that's there, we'll execute the callback, right? I think this wanted, I think it was just the mode, right? So state mode, right? Otherwise, if state console command is passed, then we'll do console command execute state console command, right? We'll just pass it through as is. And otherwise, there's not really much else to do, right? Other than, we're going to put a to-do in here. Fire off an event or console command to show the display text in the UI, which we also don't have configured, so we're also going to have to set that up as well. Not a huge deal. All right. Allie Mickey, how's it going? Welcome. Explicit good, yeah. You're not wrong. It's just if I did it now, I'd have to go through the entire code base and change it, because it would bother me. Because I don't like doing things, like that differently. So if I ever was to switch it, I'd have to go over the whole code base and do it, which would be super annoying, actually. Not something I want to spend time on doing right now. Let's see. Use an event code and a console command. The problem with that is, if I allow it to be set up that way, then you could potentially have a race condition as to, all right, well, which one do I call first, right? And there's going to be some scenario that you're going to run into where that's going to be wrong. So yeah. I definitely don't want to do both, right? I want to do one or the other. So if there's a callback set, we'll use the callback. If there's a console command set, we'll use the console command. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Cold reloading in UE is actually frozen reloading. That's funny. All right. So I guess we'll put a pin in this for now. Because I actually want to kind of set up the UI stuff first. And I think we can just do that with I might wind up doing it with an event code, actually. For this part of it. Let's go ahead and look at... let's go ahead and look at our game code. So we do actually have... in our game register events, we do actually have something here that we can actually use. So we have our game events, right? To which we can actually add something to. So let's do game event code. Display display context display text. That's terrible. I guess we could do show context display. I guess. Good enough. All right. So, yeah, I think we could just use 101 for that. And then we'll also have one where we'll have a show and we'll have a hide. Right, and that'll be a different code. And then if we take a look at the event context, we can actually use, we do actually have a string in there. So we could probably just pass the display content or the display string along that way. And this says should be freed by the sender or listener, but we don't have to do that if we're getting it here, right? So I feel like that's probably fine to not duplicate that before we send it. All right, I suppose we should probably do something like this so that we know how to use later. So context usage. And this is going to just be S, right? It's going to be S. Let's actually call this display text, right? So an event fired when context sensitivity text should be displayed. And then we have essentially the same thing here, but no context usage, right? Because we don't need to pass along a string with that. We can essentially just empty it out. So, what we can do is actually we'll just go ahead and fire this off here. Event context. We'll just say EVT. EVT data S. And we'll use state display text, right? And then we'll do event fire. The code is going to be game event code show context display. The sender is going to be, I don't know if it's really relevant actually. So we're just not going to have it. Well, I guess I could do the context system state if we needed it, I guess. And then the event itself. All right. So fire off an event to show the display text in the UI. All right. So we pass that along whenever we execute. So let's take these two and we'll go here and do that. And then we have everything we need in the context system for now, I believe. That's all we really have to do to get that set up and working. So we do... I don't even think, actually, that we need to have, like, an initialize or shutdown. Maybe we should, just to follow the pattern. Yeah, let's do it just to follow the pattern. Context system, because we might have to add initialize. We might have to add something later on that requires it, right? So context system state. And then void context system shutdown, which actually does need to do some stuff. So if we come in here, all right, so if not state, return false. Otherwise return true. And all we're gonna do for this is k0 memory state size of context system state for now. Because a 0 state is a good default. And then if state exists on the shutdown, then we essentially need to do this, free the string if it exists, right? Free both strings if they exist. And then I guess for good measure, we could also do this. I think that's kind of overkill, but there we are. Okay. So let's go to Illumina main. And let's see, did we put that in boot or did we put that in initialize? I forget. We must have put it in initialize. Let's see, where is plugin system get? Debug console load. Here we go. Wait, nope, that's not it. Here's all of our UI stuff. I thought we had where do we do the zone system initialize? Which I just realized is spelled wrong. Sweet. Let's get that open across the board and rename that to initialize. Okay. Zone system initialize is done in application initialize. Okay. I must have just scrolled over it before. All right. So let's just add our new system here. So this is going to be context sensitivity system. So I don't think we're going to have to do. We don't have any configuration for it. All we really need to do is this stuff. So we will need to add state for this here. So we're going to need context system state, and we'll do context state. So here we can do if not context system initialize, and we'll just pass the address of state context state. Okay, error failed to initialize context sensitivity state. Turn false. Right? And then zone system shutdown. Here we go. So we probably ought to shut this down in the opposite order, right? So context system shutdown. It's going to be the address of game context state. All right. So we've got that. And then all we'll need to do is go down to game command enable teleport. And this will actually, we'll route this through our context system instead. And so our context system is already actually using a console command. Let's see, string u8. Okay, so we can actually remove this whole teleport zone name thing. We can remove that if we want, because that will be done and tracked elsewhere. Okay, let's see. What does it mean assigning those hexadecimal values to a variable? I think you were talking about, you must have been talking about the enumeration. Where was that? I think it was on Illumina types. Are you talking about these guys? So these actually represent numbers, right? I could just use numbers for this, but yeah, but it makes it a little bit easier if I do something like bit flags. Oh, I had it right over here. What a dingus. If I were using bit flags, it would make this a little bit more obvious as to what that's for. But basically, these all turn into numbers. They're hexadecimal numbers, is all it is. It's just a different way of representing that. That's all it is. I could very easily just go 1, 2, 3, 4 in this case, but I have some things that are like flags where they need to be ORed together to sort of combine them, so I can have essentially a bunch of flags within a single integer. But we're not doing that, at least for events. It's just kind of the way I have it set up. This is a little bit easier, believe it or not, for me to read as I'm looking at it. Let's see. Do you have to define every single enum in C? You mean the type def? Or wait, what do you mean? What do you mean, Ivo? Hello, I'm new to Vulkan. Can I use subpass input attachment to the compute shader and use compute shader to create a wireframe? I don't know how to manage these things. Compute shaders run separately of your pipeline. Yeah, it's not related to graphics at all. Wireframe is a pipeline thing. Yeah, so I think what you're asking is like, do I have to define every single one of these? Well, no, I don't. I just do to be explicit. Because some of these things I actually skip ranges. So if I look at event H, where I've got all of my event codes here, like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Right? But then if we get down here a little bit further, where was it? Right here, I actually skip from 0A to 1, 0, right? So I left 5 spaces in between there that I could then use for something else if I wanted to. And so it kind of allows me to leave gaps in there. I don't necessarily have to do that. I could just move things around, right? But if I have other libraries that are compiled against this, or at least against an older version of it, you could potentially break things. So I don't want to do that. In C++, you just set the enum class. Yeah, so you'd set the first one, and then the rest would just count automatically. Yeah, you can do that in C too. I just don't. I'm trying to be explicit. That's the only reason I'm doing that. I don't have to do that. I'm just doing it because I'm being explicit. Okay. So, instead of doing this, what we actually should do, we are taking the, let's see, do we actually have the, we don't have the original command, which is not ideal. So we should probably enhance that a little bit. Our console command context should give us the actual original command text. So we're parsing it anyways in the console system. So why not? Let's see. I think I just want to do execute. I've got a lot of stuff here I'm thinking about, as mentioned by all the comments, but the bit that I'm looking for is, let's see. Here's the context. Okay. So the context, let's see, the command should be included in that. So let's go to the type def this structure. Let's add a couple things. So we have the argument counts. Let's do command. And this is going to be the full original console command. And then what we'll do is we'll have that, and then we'll also have one other thing, since we split it apart anyways. We'll do command name, right? And this will be the console command name only, right? So that way we have the arguments that are already separated out, the command and the command name, so that if we need those for some other reason, like passing it through, we can do that. So parts, let's see, where did we get? Did we do a string split on this? Yes, we did. Okay, so those are going to be copies of the string, so we also need to do that here. So context command is going to be string duplicate command, right? And then we want command name, right? So context command name is going to be string duplicate cmd name, right? And now, we already had those pieces of information. Now we're just passing along with the context. So now over here, instead of trying to parse arguments here, which actually this technically would have been done by our console system anyways already, so we don't have to worry about that. So instead of doing this here, we can actually do this. We can use this directly in our what's the word I'm looking for? Our context system, right? We don't need this extra state to actually track this stuff. So teleporting like this stuff can actually go. And what we're going to do instead is we will set up another console command. And this one is going to be called game command do teleport, right? And so we've got that. And what we can do here is, we'll come back to this in a second. What we'll do here is, instead of having this stuff here, we will do context system mode set, right? And then we'll do, let's see, game context state, context mode is going to be context mode, let's do teleport, right? And then the console command itself is going to be just the context command, right? And then the display text, so this is where things get a little bit interesting, is we'll need to actually set up the display text. So actually what we're going to need to do, let's see, so the zone name is going to be context arguments. We are going to need the zone name, right? So let's do kname zone name. So we are going to need that, and then we want to do zone system. Do we actually have a way to get the name? Let's see. I don't think we do. Current zone spawn get. Okay, so we need to add something to our zone system to get the name, right? Get display name from zone. Use that for the display text. So obviously that means we're going to have display text equals string format, right? And then we'll have something like teleport, or I guess we'll say travel to travel to, and then we'll do the zone name, and then press F, right? Obviously, this is very hard-coded, right? We're eventually going to want to make this configurable and all that kind of fanciness, right? But zone name string. Actually, we'll say zone display name equals 0. And for now, we'll just pass that here. zone display name. Okay, so we'll build that string there, and then this display text will go there, and that should be, this should be address of. Okay, so in other words, when we enable the teleport, we know the zone we want to transition to, right? And we know that because that's included in the console command text. So we can extract out the internal name, right? So I guess we could say this is the internal name, right? So we can extract that, and then we need to actually get the display name from the zone system. And then we go ahead and set the context to teleport. We set up our display text that is here. And then we also forward on the command to actually transition zones. And then that command will actually be executed here, right? If we actually even need that. I'm not actually 100% sure we will. Because I thought we had to do teleport already. Yes, we do. We're just going to have to set that up different, which is fine. Okay. All right, so let's do the zone system thing first. So we have this zone name here, right? So let's get, let's do, I guess we could just return a copy of the string, right? Or I guess maybe we should just return a constant pointer to it, right? So zone system display name get, right? And this will be zone system state. And then we'll have kname zone name. And then we'll have down here, we'll have that. Let's see. Do we have a shortcut to actually get to that? Just a lookup. We probably ought to. We're going to be doing several things that need this, but I'm just going to copy pasta this for now. So what this is going to do is it's going to do a lookup to grab the zone, and then we can return zone.display name, right? So that's that. Let me catch up on chat because it looks like we have quite a few messages. So let me take a break and catch up on chat. Adam Fighter, how's it going? Good to see you. Maget's good to see you as well. What sort of state is the game? I mean, it's very early days for sure. Very, very early days. Okay. Boris, how's it going? Good to see you. First time chatter. Welcome, by the way. Very happy to see in the previous VOD that Florina was added. Yes, I'm doing great. Let me pull that up, actually. Let's see, this one. So that everybody can see what you're referencing. Yeah. I haven't actually got many updates on this since the last stream, but yeah. Florina was added. I think the continent looks a lot better too. Yeah, I've got a lot more work to do. There's some sections that are completely undefined, like up here and stuff. But it is looking like a little bit more like a believable continent now, I think. Just lurking around in some software and game development. Well, welcome. Glad to have you here. Love the Pirate Bay too. Yeah, that wasn't a mistake, by the way. That's starting to look great. I appreciate that. Yeah. We also have the torrent down here that's next to the Pirate Bay. Yeah, so we've got all kinds of visual updates here. I've done a lot of work in kind of defining what these individual zones here look like. So these are all a lot more fleshed out than they were before. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let's see. Can't design a game on not even a 30% working engine. It's way more than 30% working. Way more. There's only a couple of systems that we're missing, right? All the other systems that we're missing are all game systems. Like what I'm writing in now is a game system. There are a couple of systems that we're missing in like the core engine, but nothing huge. The biggest one is animation. Obviously, that is a big one. But we don't necessarily need that to block things out. It's something I'm working on the side. So, did you implement is that GI or GL solution? I'm not sure what you mean there. Actually wondering why you're coding that whole game in Vim instead of using your game editor. Yeah, I mean, we do have some editing tools that I actually need to re-implement back into this new system, but we're not quite there yet. Because we're gonna build the editor. Actually, we're gonna build the editor into the game, and then extract those tools out later. Okay, so we have that. And so what this is going to be zone system display name get. That's going to be game zone system, or zone state rather. And then the name is just going to be zone internal name, right? And so this is not a left off anymore. That's just going to do the thing. All right, so we build some display text and then set the console system mode. Now all this one is going to do is, instead of doing this stuff, this is now going to do context system mode clear. And we just want the address of game context state, right? So there's that. And then as far as the do teleport thing, we'll have to hook that up as well. But at least this kind of gets us a decent portion of the way to where we want to be. So I guess let's solve the teleportation stuff first, and then we'll loop back and handle the UI portion of it. Oh, global illumination, GI. Gotcha. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah. Ivo, I see what you did there. Thank you for the follow, by the way. Notepad minus minus. Slipknot's notepad. Notepad. Oh, you know what, though? Spiro, I don't hate that. Notepad minus minus, but spelled with a K in front. I don't hate that at all. That's actually pretty good. I might actually have to rename it that. Okay. We do have this do teleport here, which actually just executes another command console command, right? So all I really need to do is take this down here, and we're going to set it up as a console command instead, which actually, do we even need to do that? Because now that I think about it, we should just be able to build this up here. Instead of doing this, we do just command, right? And then we set, let's see, teleport zone name. We already have internal zone name. Internal zone internal name, rather. And then the spawn point ID is actually just the second argument, which we already had as well. So we just need this guy. We'll put this here. Space this out a little bit. And then I guess what I'll do, let's just make this a U8, right? Teleport spawn point ID equals 0, and then we'll just use that directly, and then use that directly here. So actually, we don't even have to sort of chain a bunch of commands together. We can actually just generate one here, and we don't actually even need this one. We get the display name from the zone, and then we use that to generate the display text on the UI. Then we generate the console command for the teleport. And then we actually set the context sensitive data state. Okay. Which actually, not 100% sure we're even going to need this, but we'll see. We'll have to try a couple of different context-sensitive things to see how this system is going to work. Okay, so I think that's actually all this is going to need. What we need to do, though, is do teleport is actually going to be renamed to execute context sensitive, right? So we'll change it to that. And then all we actually have to do is, instead of all this stateful stuff here, we literally just have to say context system execute, and then we pass through the game context state, right? And that just executes the context sensitive thing if it's able to. And if we check that, that will only happen oh wait, we don't completely have this correct. This doesn't belong here. This belongs here when we set the mode. So it's going to be if state mode is not equal to context mode none. Then we do this. Which we could probably work on reducing the amount of duplicate code here, because that's kind of gross. Yeah, let's do that, because I'm not super happy with that. Let's actually take this guy. That's bug prone as hell to do that too. We'll do set internal. And then instead of just console command, we'll also have the callback as well, right? So what we can do is set that to callback, right? So we wipe this out if it already exists, and then set it if the new incoming one exists. And then we do the same for display text. We set the callback. And then here, we say if the context is not none, then we go ahead and fire off something to show the context display. Okay, so that should be fine. And then all we need to do here is, this is actually validating the state as well. So then we can just do state mode console command callback. In this case is going to be 0, and then display text. And then nuke all of that, and then take this and do the same thing here, swapping out console command for 0 and passing callback instead. There, much better. Okay, now, if the context mode is none, actually, yeah, we're going to want to handle this slightly different if the context mode is none, because we are going to want to fire off a message to hide the UI. Right? So we don't need to fire off anything as far as the context goes, but this needs to be hide. Right? So it's either going to show or hide that depending on what we do here, which cascades down from that. That should be fine. Notepad plus minus. I like that. Don't crap on my beloved Notepad++. No, it's actually not crapping on it at all. So the whole Notepad minus thing comes from a bit of a joke that I have running with Spiro, where I wanted a text editor that is very similar to Vim, but kind of already configured the way that I want it and doesn't have a bunch of stuff that I don't need or use. And so I wanted it to be like lightning fast and very lightweight, which Notepad++ is not lightweight particularly. So yeah, the whole joke was that we make Notepad minus, which is basically a super lightweight text editor that just has what I need and nothing else. So yeah, completely different product. And I actually do have an active development, I just haven't released it yet. Good times, yeah. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Little Carlito, how's it going? All right. Soding Daily created a really fancy editor, but it'll drive you nuts working with it. Yeah, he had like all kinds of animations and stuff on that, I think, right? I think I saw like bits and clips of that, if I'm thinking of the right thing. Okay, so that's our context system. So all we have to do there is execute that. All right, I guess we should probably check to make sure that all of this still works before moving on. I guess what we could do is we have the display text, right? So we could do, I suppose we could set up the event, right, to show and hide really quickly. So register events, we'll just do, this, and then we'll do, I guess we'll do show context display. And I guess I could handle this right in line, right? Well, okay, let's do a show and hide. All right, and then we'll also do the unregister events. This is all to support hot reloading. So instead of zone loaded, it's going to be show context display, and then hide context display. And then I don't think we need to register a new console command. I think this should be fine. And then Notepad -- just calls Notepad exe on Windows and Nano on Linux. That's very funny. All right. Rainbow colors and text is always adjusting size. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now I vividly remember what you're talking about. Yeah, I won't be doing any of that stuff, for sure. Okay. So game on event is going to be the handler for this. Okay, so we'll do case game event code show context display. And then we'll do the same for hide. And all I'm going to do for now is on this one, I'm just going to do a trace message and then say show context display and echo the command, right? So that's going to be context data s. And then this one is just going to be hide. And there's no contextual text with that. So we don't need this. All right. So essentially, well, let's see. Undeclared identifier do teleport. Oh, right. That's not going to work anymore. Execute context sensitive is what this needs to be now. Okay. Let's run this and see. Let's see what we got. So we can head over here. There we go. Okay. So, show context display, travel to, and then there's the zone name, right? And it did give us the right zone name. And then press F. And then if we actually press F, it does the thing. We do have this that I need to figure out, but I'm not really too concerned about that for now. All right, so we have that in place, but what we really need is not just echoing it to the console, right? What we really need is for that to actually show and hide a UI element, right? And ideally set the text with that, right? So actually, let me go here to console.log. Why doesn't this open console? All right, I'm gonna have to do it this way. Let's see. Okay, it was in here with right here. Travel to another Dingus test zone. Okay, so I guess what we could do is we'll just set the UI string to be this that we set up, right? So we'll have to set up a couple other things. Right, so we have probably just a SUI label is going to be enough, right? So we could set the color, register the control, add the child, all that good stuff. That's right. We actually need to make a configuration for this as well, so we don't have to do all this stuff in code. I mean, I'm being pedantic here and checking every step of this. Ordinarily, you wouldn't want to do this. This would be handled in different portions of the frame lifecycle, right? But let's go ahead and let's see. We have a black background text and then white text over that. I don't know if I'm going to bother doing that. I think I want just sort of placeholder text for now. So let's just actually do, let's see, I guess we could add it. We can add it down here. Right, and this is going to be context sensitive text, right? And what we're going to do, I guess we'll say context sensitive text. Whoops, that should have an underscore. We probably ought to go with, didn't we have a, I guess I could use the system font, that's fine. Doesn't really matter right now. Okay, so the default text that we want to use for this is actually going to be an empty string. And instead of debug text shadow, what we actually want is, we actually want context sensitive text. Okay, so this is going to be context sensitive text. This is going to be that as well, that as well. Place that, place that, replace that. Okay. Did we get them all? I think we did. The only other thing we want to do is we want to change the color, right? Let's change the color to, I don't know, like bright green, right? Sure, bright green is fine. It's going to be a little obnoxious, but it should be sufficient for what we need. Let's also change the position, right? So we'll just take this as an example. And we'll set it to let's set it to like minus, like state height minus, I don't know, like 150. Right? It'll still kind of be left aligned. We don't really care about any of that yet. We just want to see it working. Okay. So we have that. And then we have text sets here as well, right? So we're going to take this one, and we're going to go down to I guess it's going to be on event, game on event. And in here, when we want to display that text, we're going to do, instead of debug text shadow, we're going to do context sensitive text. And then the text buffer is going to be context data s, right? So that'll be that for this one. And then for hiding it, we're simply just going to blank out the text, which is essentially the same thing as hiding it because it causes it not to render. So in theory, unless I missed the step somewhere, that I believe that's all we have to do. So let's load this up, go here, and let's see, why is it not rendering? Did I not? What have I missed? Let's see. Label. Control creates. Yes, we do the create. Color set load. Oh, I should probably check to make sure that we didn't actually get any. That we didn't get any errors. Just the audio position thing. Okay, so we didn't get any errors in the console. So I'm just wondering if I guess I could try not setting the height, right? Or at least, that should be visible though. State height minus 150, that should be fine. In theory, famous last words. Yeah, 100%. Especially when you're doing Dinkus-oriented programming live, you know? Thoughts on Firefox? Yeah. I'm looking for an alternate browser. I'm still using it at the moment, but I'm looking for an alternate. We'll put it that way. Based on all the stuff going on with that. Opera is the best. It's another Chrome-based browser though, right? Using Zen browser. I thought about switching to Zen maybe, but I don't know. Zen is Firefox based, yeah. I just wonder if it has the same privacy things that Firefox does, or if it inherits any of that. I haven't tried it yet, so I don't know. So let me think of, you know what, let me make sure this displays without me doing anything first. Foobar. Oh, you know what? Did I build before I actually ran this? I don't know that I did. But we don't have the foobar text. I don't see foobar on here anywhere. Am I misremembering the way that this works then? Maybe we just need to do... Let's just do minus 50 with that. Nope, I certainly don't see it there. Okay. It's not parented. We're just switching it to be green instead of black text. This is what we based it off of. So let's see if this is all used. Oh. Okay. The window resize might be messing it up. This needs to be context sensitive text, and then this needs to be like 150. The window resize might be messing things up. I don't think so, but it might be. Yep, there it is. Yeah. So we see foobar there. I guess let's go over here and see if this actually does what it's supposed to. Yes. Travel to another dingus test zone, press F. And then when I back out of it, it should disappear. Perfect. All right. Should probably switch that to like a system font or something a little bit. Something a little bit easier to see. Do we have... Did I keep that is the question. Oh, I guess that's included with the... I included that with the standard UI, didn't I? Okay. I think I can rip this out of testbed. Debug. What was it called? Debug text shadow. Debug text shadow. Oh, okay. It was called something else in... Okay. Control. Let's see. That's the bitmap. I suppose we could create a panel in here as well, right? We could steal that, I suppose. Here we go. So let's take this over to here. And change this to context system state. Whoops. Undo. Wow, why is that? System text, was it? No, wasn't that. It was context sensitive text. Okay. We don't need this. Okay, so we can use that, I think is fine. Let's see, this panel. Suppose we could suppose we could set up this test panel too. Nah, I'm not gonna mess with it. Make it a little bit easier to see, but it's gonna look like crap. Heck with it. All right, let's build this. Let's run. See if that's a little bit easier to read. Yeah. I mean, font's still kind of small, but at least it's a little bit easier to read, right? So now we have our context sensitive stuff working, right? Because now if I press F, it doesn't do anything, right? Because I'm not inside the sort of orb there. But if I go here and I press F, then it does the thing. Now, we did not clear this, so we should probably do that once we actually execute. Why didn't they clear that, actually? I guess probably because whenever we... do execute context sensitive, I don't necessarily want to shut it off when we execute the context sensitive, right? Because it might have other things that might need to happen, and then maybe it needs to come back. If we enter into a dialogue or something, we don't necessarily want to shut it off this way. What we probably should do is we should probably do this. Game command, go to zone. Should probably do it here, right? So as soon as we do this, maybe this is where we actually fire off, or even set the zone context clear, right? So whenever we go to teleport, we should say context system clear. And then we want, we don't have the context system state here, though. Have to get that. And then game context state address of. Right, so here we want to say clear the context state. So now when we load this up and we transition zones, that should be gone. Yep, and it is. All right, cool. So that is at least the start of our context-sensitive system. That's as far as I'm probably going to take that for tonight. Because I do want to kind of start thinking about how we want to represent the player. Oh, Ivo, have a good one. Yeah. After school, how's it going? Welcome. Let's see. Zen browser at least says it's privacy focused. Yeah, Firefox used to as well. How do large projects usually keep the source up to date, but certain features detached from the source code base? By large projects, I mean large forked projects. That is... that depends, right? Depends on project requirements. So if you're talking about certain features, like adding a feature, usually you do that on a feature branch, right? And then you'd merge that into some sort of development branch, which will eventually make it into a release branch after testing and that kind of thing, if that's what you're talking about. Is there any tutorial on using the engine yet? No, there is not. Because this engine is very early days, right? This is the first game we're creating with it. So what I'm doing right now is, like, as we're actually trying to build a game, we're trying to iron out a lot of the pain points along the way, and the things that are just kind of like, that doesn't work all that well, or it's not easy to use. Because we are going to do a usability pass on this before we actually release the game. And so we're going to identify things as we go that need to be enhanced or changed. So it doesn't make any sense to write tutorials now or a template now to sort of start developing a game with it before we've kind of done that, if that makes sense. Dingus Dev, thank you for the lurk. Appreciate that. Don't update Firefox until better times. Yeah, that's true. I haven't yet, actually, but eventually it's going to start bleating at me, probably. All right. So we actually have that. Let's see. So the other thing I want to talk about, and we'll start this tonight. I don't know how far we're going to get to it because of the time, but the other thing that I want to talk about is this situation. Make sure it's not by my head there. Okay. So essentially each one of our zone scene files right now has this player object that is sort of manually coded into the file, right? And that's not what we want to do, right? We want to actually use these spawn points that we've previously added to spawn in this sort of prefab, if you will, at that point. And so by that, we want some sort of way to be able to say, well, here is a node, right, with a transform, and then that node has children and or attachments, and those children may also have their own transforms and their own attachments, and it's recursive and all that good stuff. And so we really need some sort of way to represent this physically, but also, you know, the player has plenty of other things that it's going to represent as well. And so there's the in-world representation of the player, which is right now going to be this. It's going to be way more complicated in the future because right now we just have a stupid little test cube static mesh, right? Eventually that's going to be, you know, an animated skeletal mesh with all kinds of animation states and things like that, right? And so we have this for now, but it's obviously going to grow. So what we need is basically a way to say, I have this structure of stuff, and I need to insert this into the current zone. Or more aptly, I need to spawn this into the zone, right? And this is another place I think tags are going to come in handy too. Because we added tags to attachments. I don't think we've added them to nodes yet, which is something we're probably going to have to do. But my thought is that we can have different spawn points around the world, and then those different spawn points can spawn different things. They don't just necessarily have to be the player, which is why I didn't call it player spawn points, right? And so right now what we're doing is we're essentially faking a spawn by loading up the scene and reaching in and getting this object and then moving it to one of these spawn points whenever we load up the scene, which is not right, obviously. It's not a true spawn, right? And I mean, we can continue to do that, but we need some way to say, hey, scene, drop in a player here. But our scene doesn't know anything about players, nor should it, because a player is a game-specific type of concept, right? So a player in this game is going to be a humanoid that runs around, that has weapons equipped, and armor equipped, and things like that. And so, you know, you might have another game that's a racing game where your player is a vehicle, right? And so the scene cannot and should not know about what a player is. It should just be able to say, take in maybe even a configuration like this and say, hey, spawn this thing at a particular spawn point, right? And spawn points themselves aren't even something that's known to the scene, which is by design, right? Because spawn points themselves are kind of a game-specific kind of concept, right? And so thinking about that, we probably need a way to say, okay, we need a way to spawn an object, right, or a node, right, potentially with an X form, at a specific spawn point, right, and then use that spawn point's position and rotation, but potentially a scale from the initial object when you're going ahead and spawning, right? So that's the other thing, is we're going to have to compose an X form out of multiple X forms, right? So here where we have an X form here for the player itself, right? We have this sort of position, which is here, and then we have the rotation, which is here. That's just an identity transform, or identity rotation, rather. And then we have here a mesh that has its own transform, right? So the only portion of this outer transform that we actually want when we say spawn a node here, the only thing that we're actually going to want is the scale. Because we're spawning at a spawn point, we want to say, well, we already have a position, and we already have a rotation. So we just need a scale. And so since we're composing it in that manner, what we really should do is we should say, okay, create node with position, rotation, scale. And then, we source those, the position, rotation, scale from different places. And then what we do then is we actually take those three components and we compose a new transform, and that new transform gets assigned to the node that we're spawning there. And that's kind of my thought on how we're going to do it. So that's what I'm going to look into doing now, if that makes sense. I don't know if I said this already. Thank you for the follow, Anubis. Appreciate that. All right, so let's take a look at scene H. And this is, let's see, I think we had, or I thought we did anyways. Didn't we have the ability to add a child? No, we don't. Okay, so we don't. The only way we can actually do this now is to. The only way we can do this now is through actually pre-configuration like this. So we don't actually have a way to do this now. So we need a couple things. So first off, scene node, and let's do spawn. I guess add, right? We don't want to say. Yeah, we'll do add. At position. Do I want to do position, rotation? Thank you for the follow, by the way. I really appreciate that. Scale. Const scene S, right? So I guess we could do kname, right? So we'll need name, then we'll need a vec3 position, a quaternion rotation, and then a vec3 scale. And then I think it's kind of assumed at this point that if we are doing this, it's just added to the root, right? Because if we were going to do it otherwise, we would just add a child to that, right? Which is probably something that we should do anyways. I guess what we could do, we could make this function do both, I suppose. So I guess we could do I'm trying to determine what's the best way to do this. So we do have a concept of hierarchy nodes. Which we could use to determine a parent. That's what I'm thinking. I thought we had I could have swore that we actually had a way to do this already. We have exist by name, child count get child by index, child name by index. We can get X-form handles. I guess we could do this. Let's do we want to do it by name or do we want to do it by handle? I feel like everything else is by name. Let's do parent name, right? That'll allow us to say 0 for no parent or pass the name of a parent if there is one, because these names should be unique anyways, right? So there's that. And then we're also going to need the ability to scene node add child, right? Well, actually, no. This can also actually just add the child. So we don't even need a separate function for that, actually. This can do that too. We do need the ability to add an attachment. We do need the ability to add an attachment. So how do we want to handle that, right? Because like when we go to spawn this, we need the ability to add multiple attachments. And those all have different configs. Or maybe we leave this in, but maybe scene node add from config. Oh, this shouldn't be a right. So we do parent name and then string config, right? And this shouldn't be const. All right, so what this could do, and this is probably going to be the quicker and easier thing to set up now that I think about it. What we could essentially do is send this in and say, hey, scene, add this with no parent. Here's the config, parse the config within this, and then just scaffold all this stuff. I think that makes sense. DB Master C, I appreciate that. First time chatter and follower, thank you so much. Came for the Arch by the way tag, followed by the enlightened choice of editor. Appreciate that. I also named my machine Arch by the way down here. It just keeps coming up on stream, so I just thought it was funny. All right, so I guess I'll do this. And I guess we'll put this here. Okay, so let's actually let's do this one first. So if not seen, obviously, or not config. Just fail right away. Otherwise, return true. All right. So what we'll do in here is we'll actually go ahead and parse this config. So we'll say case and tree from string, right? The source string is going to be config. And then the case and tree is just going to be, you know, temp tree, whatever. Let's just zero that out to be all right. And this can fail, right? So if this fails to parse, then failed to parse new scene node configuration. Turn false. Okay. So now that we've parsed this, we should probably go ahead and do, I guess first we'll say if parent name is not equal to invalid kname, then we're going to have a parent to essentially get, right? So I really need to do a faster lookup, right? Because I'm going to have to do this again, which is really kind of annoying. So node metadata, we want to look for the parent name. Okay, so parent node handle. And then we want to, in fact, I'm going to have to do this or left off. Create new hierarchy node handle and xform. Based on config. And add it to the scene. All right. And the reason I'm going to have to do left off is because that is where we're going to have to leave it for tonight because I'm out of time. Commercial for me if you're asking questions. Oh, yeah, no. Wasn't any questions. I was just basically saying, talking about the, you know, Arch, by the way, that I named my machine that and all that stuff. Yeah. It's just a constant thing that comes up on stream, so I thought it was funny to rename my machine that too. All right. But yeah, that is all the time I have tonight because I do have to get up and work in the morning. So I'll leave this guy up here so that you guys can just kind of take a gander at that while I find somebody to raid. If you guys haven't already, I would really appreciate a follow, either on the YouTube or the Twitch side, or both if you're so inclined. Thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate that. Smudge, how's it going? It's such a meme. It brought a smile to my face. Yeah, exactly. It makes me laugh all the time. Thank you again for the follow. Appreciate that. Let's find somebody to raid. Let's see. Hoping to find something loosely related, maybe. Narrow the results a little bit. Let's see. Bear with me here a second while I find somebody to raid. Doesn't look like there's a whole lot out there tonight in terms of like C or C++ game dev. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot. So what we're gonna do, let me refresh the list one more time. Spiro, thanks for being here. I appreciate you, buddy. All right, we're gonna raid Jitspo. So he is working on a retro FPS that's pretty sweet looking. He's using Godot in his case, but he's done a lot of custom work in there, and it's coming along pretty nicely. I think it's a good looking game. Looks like he's combating errors at the moment, so we'll see where he is at. And yeah, that's going to do it for tonight. So thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you all, and I will see you guys on the next stream. See ya.